you very much. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming and joining us for this session. My name is Javier Garcia. I'm Director General of the Spanish Association for Standardization and Vice President Technical of ISO. And welcome to this session, Global Clean Hydrogen Market, Harmonization of Measuring, Reporting, Verification, and Accreditation. So earlier this week, here at COP28, a suite of flagship initiatives has been launched to accelerate commercialization of hydrogen to keep the 1.5 degrees target within reach and to unlock the socio-economic benefits of cross-border value chains for hydrogen and its derivatives. This suite of initiatives feature three areas mainly. One, intergovernmental declaration of intent on mutual recognition of certification schemes for hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives, covering over 80% of the future global market in hydrogen and its derivatives. Second, the ISO methodology, providing a global benchmark for greenhouse gas emissions assessment of hydrogen pathways on a life cycle analysis basis. And third, a public-private action statement on cross-border trade corridors in hydrogen and derivatives in partnership with the International Hydrogen Trade Forum and the Hydrogen Council. These flagship outcomes were launched at the COP's presidency's high-level roundtable on hydrogen. Today's session intends to focus on the role of international standards for measuring, reporting, and accredited verification as key tools to achieve comparable product carbon footprints for clean hydrogen and to promote and accelerate its global dissemination. The session will discuss the important interplay of all industry, standardization, accreditation, and regulatory players, which is the prerequisite for building a clean, green hydrogen market worldwide. I want to thank all the speakers in advance for accompanying us this time, not only of the day, I think this time of the week. I think by now we are all in our reserves of energies, so I thank you very much for your time and dedication. We have some last-minute changes to the program, which, as I say, I think it's quite logical at this time of the COP. We have to excuse our colleague from the Hydrogen Council, Daria Nochevnik, who had a last-minute, but really last-minute, like half an hour ago, commitment that doesn't make it possible for her to be here with us now. And then I want to thank Mr. David Bublil from the European Commission, who's replacing Mr. Gerassimos Thomas. So, having said that, and in order to begin with the session and with the key speakers, I would like to give the floor in the first place to Mitsuhiro Kohara from the Japan Gas Association to do his presentation. Mr. Kohara joined the Osaka Gas Company, where he was mainly involved in the design and construction of liquefied natural gas, receiving terminals, and was engaged in technical development. Mr. Kohara currently serves as manager of the International Certification and Standards Harmonization Group at the Japan Gas Association. So, Mr. Kohara, the floor is yours, and I understand that your talking points will be around the need for international standards on e-methane gas. This is whatever you want. If you want to speak from here or from there, feel good. The green.
Okay. So thank you for giving me this opportunity Japan Gas Association has about 200 members of city gas supply companies in Japan, such as Tokyo Gas, Osaka Gas. Today, I will talk about e-methane. E-methane is a synthetic gas produced from hydrogen and recycled CO2. And firstly, let me briefly explain Japanese gas industry's vision. We are setting a goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. To achieve that, we are focusing on e-methane. The goal is to change natural gas to e-methane to 90%, and the remaining 10% will come from biogas and direct use of hydrogen. Next slide, how to produce e-methane is shown in this chemical reaction formula. This is called Sabatier reaction. E-methane is one of the hydrogen utilizations. And this slide shows the CO2 emissions of e-methane. CO2 is emitted when e-methane is combusted, but it does not increase atmospheric CO2 because captured CO2 is from direct air capture or biogenic CO2 in the future. And e-methane has the same property as methane, which is the main component of natural gas. Therefore, existing infrastructure such as liquefaction plants, LNG carriers, receiving terminals, pipelines, and gas appliances can continue to be utilized. E-methane can start decarbonizing from 1% as a drop in clean fuel. This is able to realize smooth transition of city gas, and it will not require significant change of existing city gas infrastructure. And e-methane is recognized as an effective method of reducing CO2 emissions in recent IPCC report and in the G7 in Japan this year. Therefore, the e-methane initiative is recognized not only by the Japanese gas industry, but also in international discussions on decarbonizations. And now we are developing some projects overseas. A large amount of e-methane production requires large amount of hydrogen as well. In order to produce hydrogen, we need a large amount of renewable electricity, which is difficult in Japan. Therefore, we are studying the development of e-methane production facilities all over the world, which can supply large amount of renewable electricity at low cost. And the next slide shows our efforts to establish greenhouse gas accounting rules in ISO. We have proposed this calculation formula for carbon footprint in life cycle to express reduction effect of CO2 capture in the entire e-methane value chain in accordance with ISO 14067. And this proposal is now discussed in annex of ISO 6338, which is calculations of GHG emissions throughout the LNG value chain. If we have different rules which is running in parallel in each country, it becomes complicated. Therefore, we would like to proceed with a sense of unity in accordance with the existing ISO rules. The final slide shows the necessity of hydrogen certification and e-methane CO2 accounting rules. Synthetic fuels such as e-methane have several issues that we have to solve before they can be implemented in society, but we will be big consumers of hydrogen in the future, so we need an international certification of hydrogen as a raw material of e-methane. The Japan Gas Association will continue to work toward the utilization of e-methane, and for this reason, it is important to work quickly toward the establishment of international standards. And we strongly hope that cooperation across national borders will be established. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you also for your presentation, for the identification of the main topics and the clear messages also in terms of link between the needs of your industry and the standardization works at international level. Thank you very much. I would like to move now to the next speaker on the line, which is Mr. David Bublil. David has been working in the European Commission for the last 20 years, where he has occupied varied positions, including advisor to the Commissioner in charge of taxation and spokesperson on taxation and customs. Since the end of 2019, as a deputy head of UNID in the Directorate General in charge of taxation and customs, David has been working on several elements of the EU Green Deal, in particular coordinating the work on the Commission proposal for a carbon border adjustment mechanism. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this introduction that will explain why I'm here, because I must say I'm not really an expert in hydrogen or in standards. Well, among the things I've done in the Commission, I've worked a bit on standards, but that's not my expertise. But I've been working a lot on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is, well, a subject that has been raised a number of times since the beginning of this COP. And I'll be happy to tell you how it relates to hydrogen. Well, if I were elsewhere than here, I would say a few words about the fact that climate change is happening, but you're all aware of that. And hydrogen is, well, is part of the EU solution. Hydrogen is a fuel, the use of which may be, well, very low carbon, but the production of which can be very carbon intensive. So, well, the European Union has, well, has very ambitious goals since our climate law to decarbonize, and hydrogen is part of our strategy. The EU has committed to accelerate the hydrogen economy through the EU's hydrogen strategy, which aims at promoting the uptake of renewable and low-carbon hydrogen to help the economy, the EU to decarbonize in a cost-effective way and to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels. So the EU aims at producing 10 million tons and importing 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen in 2030. And, well, as I was saying, no, I was not saying that actually, that renewable hydrogen can be obtained by electrolysis, and, well, it may play a key role in decarbonizing sectors where other alternatives are unfeasible or expensive. So there's a number of measures that we have to favor the use of this fuel, but one of them is the inclusion of hydrogen in the scope of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. The carbon border adjustment mechanism is this instrument that the EU has put in place to reinforce the constraint, the carbon constraint on a number of sectors in the context of the EU emission trading system, while addressing the risk of carbon leakage. And, well, hydrogen, in the scope of the carbon border adjustment, we have many carbon-intensive sectors such as iron and steel, aluminium, fertilizers, cement, production of electricity, and we also have hydrogen. And, well, the reason, well, one of the main reasons why we have hydrogen in this context is that, as I was saying, we intend to produce a lot of hydrogen and we intend to import a lot of hydrogen. Of course, if we want this approach to contribute to our decarbonation, this hydrogen that we want to produce and import will need to be decarbonized. And so it will need to be subject to significant constraints in the EU, constraints that we want to apply also at the border, because if we put a constraint in the EU and that it results in the production of dirty hydrogen in the rest of the world, it's not good for the EU, it's not good for the rest of the world, it's not good for anyone. And that's the reason why we have hydrogen in the scope of CBAM. You should know that, currently hydrogen, you know that, is not really transported, or if it's transported, it's transported at high cost. One of the main ways to transport hydrogen is to combine it with other products or to produce ammonia. And ammonia is also in the scope of CBAM. So in principle, the current way hydrogen is imported in the EU right now is already in the scope of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. We're looking into ways to ensure that other ways to importing hydrogen in the EU, be it liquefied through pipelines or on liquid carriers, are also covered in the scope of CBAM. The carbon border adjustment mechanism has started. It has started 2 months ago, but it has started in a way that is very progressive. Right now, it's only about reporting the emissions that are embedded in the goods that are imported in the EU without any payment. The payment will start in 2026, and they will be phased in progressively from 2026 to 2034. In this transitional period where we're collecting information, we're trying to determine, first, what data is available, how emissions are monitored in the rest of the world, how we can build on this monitoring to simplify the compliance with CBAM. And this, possibly for the production of hydrogen, these information are easier to gather than for some other products. And this will allow us defining a methodology more robust and more interoperable with what's happening in the rest of the world for the definitive period. That's why that will allow us to come up with some improvements to the CBAM regulation and a new methodology in 2025, so that we will have something in 2026 that is taking into account what our partners do also in terms of carbon pricing and in terms of monitoring, and if other countries are working on their own carbon border adjustment. From there, again, we have also standards in the EU on hydrogen, and we will try to apply them at the border, but the idea is really that we believe hydrogen can help us in the future, and we're looking forward working with our partner in the rest of the world to make sure that this hydrogen that we import for our decarbonation is produced in a way that does not cause damages elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David, for sharing with us the perspective of the European regulator. And now, hello, Anne, by the way, welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No problem. We're just going to leave your intervention for later on, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So we move then now from the European regulator to the Japanese regulator. And I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Takahama Wataru, who is Director for Global Environmental Affairs Office at the Industrial Science and Technology Policy and Environment Bureau of the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan since July 22, where he leads the global climate policy. So, Mr. Takahama, I'm happy to give you the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. So before talking about hydrogen, I want to introduce 3 basic policy on climate issue, Japanese stance. There are 3 points. First, emission reduction should be in line with economic growth and energy stable supply. Because climate issue is a global issue, so we have to involve developing country. So that's why, because economic growth and energy stable supply will be very important. And second one is, we call it one goal with various pathways. To have the common goal, that is very important. We have to have the common goal, common ambitious target. We have to have it. But in addition to that, we need a various pathway, because we, as I say, we have to involve other countries to tackle this climate issue. So we have how to tackle those issues and how to achieve the target. That should be various pathways. That's our second policy on it. And third one is solution to the world, because our emission is 3%. I don't want to say this is only 3%. This is very big number, so we have to clean up 3%. But at the same time, we have to contribute to the 97%. So that's because our policy is solution to the world. So based on those 3 basic policy, hydrogen is very important. Hydrogen is very important for hard-to-abate sector, transport, and energy sector as well. So for example, please come to the Japanese pavilion. That's 63, it's over there. So there is a hydrogen turbine for thermal plant. That's zero emission thermal power plant. There is some rumor that hydrogen power plant is not coming. But actually, technology is over there. So please come to Japanese pavilion. The technology is already there. So, and in addition to that, Japanese government is going to tackle hard-to-abate sector. Our Prime Minister already committed, and through the G7 process, we commit to tackle to the hard-to-abate sector. So the important thing is to tackle climate issue together globally. So through this, so that's why, because standardization and decarbonization is very important. So through today's discussion, we expect the hydrogen society is coming recently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us the perspective of the, in this case again, the regulator, but from another region of the world. So, and showing us that technology is evolving. Technology is allowing things that some years ago was not even thinkable, and then seeing how standards really help to disseminate them. No? I would like now to give the floor to Smeeta Fokeer from UNIDO, Smeeta is an industrial development officer at the Climate and Technology Partnership Division of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. And she is responsible for the development and implementation of projects focused on how green hydrogen can contribute to sustainable industrial development. So I would like to give you the floor, and I understand you would give us the perspective of the role of developing countries for promoting and for impulsing the global ramp-up of this hydrogen market. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. In the team, I'm not the one who is responsible for standards, but since my colleague is not around at COP anymore, I decided to step in. So I'll do my best to talk you through what UNIDO has been doing to advance global standards and certification schemes. We all know that hydrogen presents an opportunity for developing countries to achieve a net zero development in the global south. It's a key for them to decarbonize their hard-to-abate sector, including steel, cement, chemical industries, the heavy transport, etc. It can create jobs, skills upgrading, investment mobilization, wealth creation, eventually energy security, and all of that combined together can create economic resilience and a green, diversified economy. So going towards that net zero future, for hydrogen, the producing centers are mostly the global south, and the hydrogen demand centers are mostly in the global north. So there will be some trade happening, and we need to. There's been several MOUs, trade routes, etc., that trading corridors that's been established, and we need to have some common understanding of what is being traded. So we need to decarbonize the hydrogen production to reach less than 1 gram of CO2 equivalent per kilo of hydrogen that's produced. So what are we facing right now? We're facing inconsistency of a voluntary and mandatory market mechanisms. There are several, when we talk about hydrogen, people refer to it in terms of colors, different colors to represent green, blue, pink, etc., etc., to represent different amount of CO2 that was emitted during its production, and normally different sources of production. So, and also, it's not only during CO2 emission is not only during the hydrogen production itself, but also along the whole value chain of that clean hydrogen. So UNIDO has been in a very enviable position, I would say, to partner up with ISO to develop the global technical standards on hydrogen. And we're looking at developing the methodology for accounting of green GHG emission in hydrogen production, but not only, but also conditioning and transport. That shows the pathway we went through with ISO, and on the 5th, the publication of the methodology was launched at COP, and now the work that we have remaining is to develop a standard out of that for the production, the conversion, conditioning, and transport. Showing a bit the UNIDO ISO collaboration, it will not hopefully end here with once the methodology, once the standard has been developed, but we also need to accelerate the capacity building and knowledge sharing in developing countries to apply that standard. So we're looking at capacity building activities, development of guidance documents, general knowledge dissemination, but I think more above all of that is the enhanced participation of developing countries in standard setting, in that preparation on how standards are set, because eventually it will affect them as well. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you very much for sharing with us the perspective of the of developing countries, the references to trade, obviously, and how relevant indeed the collaboration with ISO is in developing those international standards. I would like now to give the floor to our online colleague, speaker. Is Gabriel Lassery, is with us from Brazil. And he holds a BSc in Mechanical Engineering, obtained from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and is a candidate to doctorate at the Transport Engineering program of this same university since 2015. He's been working with sustainable technologies, hydrogen energy, and hybrid vehicles in the hydrogen laboratory at this same university, Universidad Federal de Rio de Janeiro. Gabriel is the executive superintendent for the Brazilian Hydrogen Association. So, Gabriel, the floor is yours. I'm not sure if he can control the... I have to do it for him? Okay, so Gabriel, the floor is yours, and please do tell me whenever you want me to pass to the next.
Thank you so much, Mr. Javier. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Well, I think so. So, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I cannot be there in person. My name is Gabriel Lassery. I am the Executive Superintendent for the Brazilian Hydrogen Association, but also a researcher at the Hydrogen Laboratory at COPI in the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. So today I'll briefly show a little bit of the panorama on low-emission hydrogen in Brazil and how a robust certification system can foster the decarbonization and the development of this nascent hydrogen market. So just to give some brief words on the role of the Brazilian Hydrogen Association, it was created in 2017. Back in 2021, ABH2 only had about 3 institutional members, and now there are more than 90. So it goes to show how much the interest for hydrogen energy has grown in Brazil in the past 3 years. ABH2 works to foster the hydrogen value chain not only in Brazil, but also internationally. We believe that in this nascent market, the key points are regulations, codes and standards, and knowledge sharing in hydrogen energy. So ABH2 maintains a committee for the Special Study 67 in the Brazilian Codes and Standards Association, which is a national mirror for the TC 197 and ISO. About 10 days ago, a very important work proposal by ABNT and AFNA from France was published by ISO and also presented here at COP28 in the beginning of this week. And there is a technical specification for methodology for determining greenhouse gas associated with the hydrogen production, conditioning, and transport up to consumption gate. So this is a document that was very anticipated by the industry due to its ability to foster regulatory certainty to hydrogen projects and also ultimately push the hydrogen market forward. I was project leader of this initiative. Rocha Antoni, who is the executive director for IPT, was the convener, and I'm very happy to say that it is ready and published. On the regulation side, which works alongside the federal government, deputies and senates to help build the hydrogen legal framework in Brazil, and also help to build the updated hydrogen strategy in Brazil, that is the Programa Nacional de Hidrogênio, which I'll be talking a little bit more in the next slide. So next slide, please. This is a map that we always like to start presentation with. Many countries fit as hydrogen consumers, others as hydrogen producers, but Brazil kind of falls in between of those two categories. And it's because Brazil has a big potential for hydrogen production, but also for consumption in the internal market. So a big reason behind it is the big variety of potential sources for producing hydrogen in Brazil. Brazil has a plethora of renewables. It has a big availability of waste, biomass, and biofuels. The oil and gas sector is very well developed and willing to participate in the energy transition, and Brazil even has natural hydrogen occurrences. For the creation of demand in Brazil, the low-hanging fruits are the fertilizer sector, since Brazil agriculture is very strong, but also refineries, low-emission products decarbonized with hydrogen, such as steel and synthetic fuels, high-energy-intensive vehicles, and exports. So considering the natural resources and as a way to foster the opening of the hydrogen market without a pre-selection of technologies, but focusing on the energy transition itself, the Brazilian National Hydrogen Strategy does not use colors, the color approach for hydrogen technology, but the term low emission or low carbon emission hydrogen. So next slide, please. The strategy is divided into 6 X that are the strengthening of technological bases, training capacity building, energy planning, legal and regulatory framework, new industrialization, market growth and competitiveness, and then transversal axis, that is international cooperation. So the program is a result of many discussions that started way back into 2021 in thematic chambers with different stakeholders in Brazil, such as the private sector, academia, and public power. And a lot of consensus has been built so far, and the final release came out in the last August. The directives for the strategy are the decarbonization of the economy, highlighting the diversity of energy sources and technology alternatives in Brazil, fostering national technological development to contribute to the national industry and develop a competitive market, and also to build up synergies and articulation with other countries. So the plan itself consists of actions to be taken for each of the axes during the next 3 years, and the goal is to have it updated every year for the subsequent 3-year plan. And for the next 3 years, the targets are the creation of the legal regulatory framework aligned with international regulations, the build-up of research, development, and innovation focusing on the development of national technologies and the internal market, and bringing access to financing for projects in the country. But in order to achieve it, it is fundamental to work on the broad adoption of standards to provide a clear path for measuring, reporting, verification, and accreditation to have, in the end, a robust low-emission hydrogen certification system following internationally agreed methodologies, such as the one developed in ISO. So, as a way to promote the value chain as a whole, the National Hydrogen Strategy aims to create the Pro-Hubs Brazil, congregating hydrogen producers and consumers, mitigating some of the challenges in large-scale hydrogen storage and transportation. And not exactly in the hydrogen strategy, but also regarding regulations in Brazil, there are 2 bills of law that I'd like to highlight. Those are the Hydrogen Legal Framework and the Fields of the Future Bills of Law. The Hydrogen Legal Framework aims to create the low carbon emission national hydrogen policy, along with the low carbon emission national hydrogen certification system, based on the emission for the kilogram of hydrogen accounted in its life cycle. And it aims to provide incentives for low emission hydrogen projects in Brazil. And for the Fields of the Future Bills of Law, that brings regulatory basis, not for hydrogen itself, but for possible hydrogen derivatives, products, and associated technologies, such as biofuels, synthetic fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, and carbon capture and storage. So next slide. Well, thank you so much. This is what I wanted to show. I hope it wasn't too fast, but I'll be glad to be present in the discussions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gabriel. I think I'm going to go back so that we have now the opportunity and to listen to you, to your presentation. Can you hand it over till the end of the table? Thank you. And So Anne, it was maybe it was even good to have you at the end, because now Gabriel did a clear reference to the need for accreditation as a means to ensure that the system. Yeah. So Anne Howard, with whom we've had the pleasure to share a couple of sessions during these days as well, Senior Director of Accreditation, Validation and Verification at the American National Standards Institute, National Accreditation Board, ANAB. As Senior Director of ANAB's Validation and Verification Program, and oversees the operation of and sets the strategic direction for accreditation programs that oversee the work of third-party validation and verification bodies. So, and now kind of we wrap up. Now we had the view of industry, we had the view of the regulators, incorporating the view of developing countries, and now you as the assurance of the system. Please.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to extend my thanks on behalf of IEF to the panelists. Thank you for joining us today. And also extend the thanks of the current chair of IEF, Emanuele Riva of Accredia, the national accreditation body of Italy. To start out, IEF is a global network of accreditation bodies and other organizations involved in accredited conformity assessment. We've been in existence for over 30 years, and we represent over 108 countries, including 97 accreditation bodies. IEF's core mission, if you can, oh, I'm doing that. IEF's core mission is to support harmonization of accreditation requirements, programs, and procedures worldwide, and to establish multilateral recognition arrangements, or we call them MLAs. And that is where the third-party conformity assessment bodies get audited by an accreditation body. The accreditation bodies peer evaluate each other to ISO IEC 17011, and that sets the requirements for the accreditation body operation. And through that, we establish this MLA framework. And the purpose of the MLA framework is to increase the worldwide acceptance of accredited conformity assessment and to help reduce trade restrictions in support of the World Trade Organization's technical barriers to trade agreement. Becoming a signatory to the MLA means that we undergo regular peer evaluations, and there are different levels to this MLA. I'll go into those. I think I've covered the mission. Okay. So the IF MLA starts at level 1, which is 17,011, and then from there, there are levels 2 and 3. The type of conformity assessment being level 2, product certification, management systems, validation and verification, and then level 3 being the generic normative documents used by the AB. So in the case of greenhouse gas validation and verification, that's ISO 14065. And then the MLA can actually dive deeper to facilitate that trade. And that goes down to, we might go there. No. That goes down to levels 4 and 5, which would be scheme-specific requirements at level 4 for the AB, applying those scheme-specific requirements, and level 5, scheme-specific requirements being applied by the conformity assessment body to the product, service, or management system. And through that MLA, we have many examples of that being put into practice now. So we have ICAO CORSIA at level 4 and 5 for the global aviation agreement. We have the Global Gap MLA in the product certification space for food practices and crop practices. So these things are already existing and can be utilized here to facilitate green hydrogen trade. I want to go into a little bit of the work that show the coverage of the MLA and the work that's being done on the MLA. There are 84 MLA signatories, And for greenhouse gas validation and verification, we have 33. For management systems, 55. And those are those different lines I was talking about. This is global use of ISO 14065, and this is really just for your information to show how the growth of accredited validation and verification around climate change mitigation has grown. So back, if we looked at this 10 years ago, there would have been just a few scattered ABs, and now, look at it growing. We have over 50 now operating these programs to the same standard. And that's really, great and encouraging to see that kind of growth. Just to talk briefly about some of the work that's happening between the different ABs and in the space of green hydrogen. United Kingdom Accreditation Service in the UK is participating in the Hydrogen Delivery Council Certification Working Group, so they're talking to their regulator about setting up conformity assessment solutions. ANAB and Standards Council of Canada are working with regulators in North America to deploy green hydrogen technologies there and initiatives. In Asia Pacific, JAB, Shikako Makino, who's not here today, but she's working with METI in Japan to set up their system. And in the EU, we have the European Cooperation for Accreditation actively working to cooperate in this space in response to the EU mandate on renewable hydrogen production and CBAM. So there's a lot of different, initiatives going at once, a lot of different conversations happening. It would be really useful, I think, to, maybe try to come together and talk about how those conversations are evolving and how we can harmonize and facilitate, the trade that we know is going to be prominent here. So I would just want to end with say that this presents a big challenge, but also a great opportunity to work together towards greater harmonization and, to really use the system that is built for purpose and can help us deliver, harmonization in the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so with this, we're done with the presentations from the speakers. Before I open the floor for any questions you might have, I assume there is a microphone there somewhere if anybody wants to ask a question. I would like, Anne, since you had the floor, the last one, I would like to ask you a specific question. So in terms of, just only looking, you guys don't see it, but I still see it here in my computer, the map that you saw before, that you shared with us on the use of the 14065. Which are the challenges that you, as the accreditation, with the perspective that you have from the accreditation body and knowing the resources or anticipating the resources that might be needed in terms of assessment of such a mechanism, which would be those challenges that you would anticipate?
So I think some of the challenges will be harmonization around all of the different colors of hydrogen. Green, blue, low carbon, renewable carbon, low carbon, et cetera, so on and so forth. It seems like there was some good progress on that at this COP, at the COP presidency, at the high-level roundtable on hydrogen, with the intergovernmental declaration of the intent on mutual recognition of certification schemes for hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives, in partnership with the International Hydrogen Trade Forum and the Hydrogen Council. I do think we're going to be challenged with these different national approaches. I think our programs are going to look different, depending on the needs of that particular jurisdiction and what that regulator wants to achieve and how they set about doing that. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can get around that. That's always the case, right? That's the same in many spaces, but I expect that to also be we're going to have a variety of different national standards and regulatory approaches. So international harmonization is a challenge, but also an opportunity, right? That can be aided by the existence of the quality infrastructure that we already have and we depend on for so many other things. Another challenge is going to be supply and cost, I think. Cost is key, and the market's still unpredictable. So the cost of conformity assessment may be a factor, especially if the data controls are weak. The cost of, verification can go up if we're verifying the greenhouse gas emissions. Costs would include the data collection, the auditing, and the trading fees. New technologies such as blockchain, smart contracts, auditing may decrease those costs. But the main thing is the development of a market to drive the investment, and the cost will come down like it did with other renewable sources like solar. There was a great panel actually on scaling green hydrogen hosted by the World Bank on December 3rd. If anyone didn't see that, they have the live stream and you can go check it out. It's really, really good on that subject. Other challenges, differences in carbon intensity thresholds, different accounting methodologies, use of different global warming potentials. And then on the greenhouse gas accounting side, if we're not looking at the certification of the guarantee of origin, emissions can occur at all stages along the hydrogen supply chain, and accounting for losses and emissions from the distribution and storage of hydrogen will present challenges, I feel, especially if we're overseeing that and trying to harmonize how we approach that. It would be helpful to have input from standard setting organizations and the conformity assessment community, the conformity assessment bodies, around best practices in hydrogen accounting, disclosure, and verification. I think that would be a good start. We can start to put a list together of things that we need to tackle and try to harmonize as much as we can.
So quite a few, quite a few challenges there. You refer to standards, you refer to harmonization. I would like to definitely ask from one side the industry which kind of standards you are anticipating that or are already delivering or developing to respond to some of these challenges. And then I would also like to although David, you already anticipated in your intervention, but to see from the regulator's perspective, Europe, Japan also, what is your vision in terms of how to address some of these challenges that were posed? But Mitsuhiro, if you want first.
Yes, thank you. If there is a single global standard or a guideline, that's great. But even if that is not the case, so at least we need a standard of speaking in same language. And what I mean by same language is that they shall be compatible, transferable each other, and the new form of e-methane and other synthetic fuels will be traded across borders. Harmonized standard with accredited verification is necessary to be same between borders and regions for the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. David, I don't know if you want to, some ideas maybe.
Maybe I can say a few things about that, and sorry if I repeat words that have been said already. But, for all CBAM goods, we are in a phase where we're collecting information on how emissions are accounted for and reported. And we're asking the importers of these goods to declare what are the embedded emissions of the goods they import and what methods they have followed to determine these emissions. And this exercise is there to complement the information that we already have on this and to determine which methods, which standards we shall use in the future to ensure that compliance with CBAM is at the same time easy and reliable. You were mentioning verification and accredited verifiers. Yes, in CBAM, like in the ETS and many other approaches, we rely on verification reports by accredited verifiers. The challenge we have in hydrogen is that, as I was saying, we're not importing so much of hydrogen until now. So it is a good for which we will face a bit more difficulties knowing what to rely on. We have in the methodology that we have now already referred to standards that exist in the EU in the context of the Renewable Energy Directive. But our intention is to continue looking for ways to ensure that the hydrogen is as low carbon as possible, but in a way that limits the burden for the importers.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I don't know if Mr. Takahama, you also want to comment from your perspective?
Thank you very much. So I think trusted and transparent standard is needed, but we should not forget about the purpose. What is the purpose? Purpose is to have or to create the market. That is our purpose, to have the standard. So if we will have the too much cost onto getting the verification, there will be a small market. So for example, if Japanese company have to get verification in a third country, the language is different, we need a travel cost, that will increase the cost. So that's why, because I fully support another work, so mutual recognition is very important to decrease the cost to get the verification. So that's why, because today's discussion is very important for hydrogen market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for these first reactions. I don't know if anybody from the room wants to make any questions to our speakers now. We have a request over there, if you could. All right, thank you very much. So please say your name and affiliation and then the question.
My name is Kalai. I'm a master student working on hydrogen and hydrogen production. So my main doubt is, I really like hydrogen, but to envision a hydrogen future, we also need to talk about investments for the infrastructure. Can you also speak, everyone in the hydrogen economy, everyone dependent on the hydrogen economy is here. Can you please speak about a bit of risks in the infrastructure needed for hydrogen?
Who wants to take that one? The industry side. I would not forget we have a colleague online as well, Gabriel. I don't know. Anybody? Please. Yeah.
Yes, investment in hydrogen, we're talking into the billions for one single plant. It's not something that's easy to come by. It's one of the bottlenecks, actually, to growing the hydrogen economy. And of course, you have that big, huge investment, and you only put in such an investment if you know you'll get something out in return, right? And right now, that is not guaranteed. Banks, the only banks currently that's providing funding, financial assistance for hydrogen projects are mostly multilateral banks. When we recently did a survey of those banks to see how they see risks. Why is there so little financial instruments available for hydrogen projects? And the highest risk was demand, lack of demand. Yeah? So hydrogen is a very complex energy source, energy carrier, because on the one hand, you have to create the supply, and on the other hand, you have to also create the demand. Yeah, so you have to act on both sides. And there are some financial mechanisms, mostly state-funded subsidies, different ones, but different financial instruments which can be we've looked at. Actually, today we launched a toolkit for developing countries on green hydrogen, how to create the demand locally. So yes, it's something that the world's still working on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's another request here.
Hi, my name is Silva from ISO. I have a question to representatives of regulators and governments about carbon pricing. To what extent your respective jurisdictions, what are the plans, the vision to carbon pricing, and how do you think that interacts or can support the creation of the market, as you mentioned? If that's the purpose, to what extent that can tilt the balance to make some of the projects become economically feasible?
Whoever, David.
I'm happy to answer first. Well, when I'm talking about the carbon border adjustment, what is important with the carbon border adjustment is that it's the external side of the main carbon pricing instrument that we have in the EU, the emission trading scheme. And hydrogen is already, production of hydrogen is already in the scope of the EU emission trading system, but like many other products, they benefit from some free allocation, so the carbon price is paid only in part. With the carbon border adjustment mechanism, what we will do is that the production in the EU will be subject to the full carbon price, which we will also apply at the border. And this should give an advantage to the production of decarbonized hydrogen, both when it's produced in the EU and when it's imported from other countries.
Thank you. Would you like to comment as well?
Thank you very much. Japan already have the carbon price, and in addition to that, we decide to introduce ETS. We call it GX ETS. And in addition to that, we are going to introduce a GX surcharge. It's kind of a tax, but we call it a GX surcharge. So carbon price is very important. But from the viewpoint of us, carbon price is one of the policy tools to achieve the target or purpose. So the important thing is policy mix. For example, of course, subsidy is one of the policy, and as like you explained that demand is needed. Our big challenge at this moment is demand. We need demand. So that, for example, December 2nd, there is an initiative led by UNIDO. It's a green procurement. We decide to join to promote the green procurement. That will be the one of the policy to promote, to have the hydrogen society. So policy mix is very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much for the answers. More questions? A couple of more over here. Thank you. Please, go ahead. Present yourself and then the question and to whom you want to address it.
Thank you. I am Mariam from Egypt. I work at Taka Arabia. We're currently developing our pilot phase for the green hydrogen project in the Suez Canal Economic Zone. We're in the feasibility phase. And like one of the things that we're considering is trying to make our end product comply with the EU regulations so that perhaps we can export it. And to be honest, like one of the things that I've been wondering about recently is I understand that green certifications and policies are very important for ensuring the integrity of the end product. But at the same time, I am just wondering what you think about this. Well, basically, to comply with, for example, the Renewable Energy Directive, to comply with a temporal correlation, we'll have to invest in so much battery storage, for example. To comply with the additionality concept, we might end up needing to, we will actually construct new renewable energy plants, even if we have existing plants that are otherwise being curtailed. To comply with the dedicated transmission lines, if we're able to do that, then we'll have to invest a lot of resources in that. So I'm just wondering if maybe some of those policies, while the initial purpose is to ensure integrity of the green product, but at the same time it's posing a huge economic obstacle, and sometimes even environmental impact if we're considering the manufacturing carbon footprint of the whole value chain. What do you think about that? What do you think could be the solutions? Yeah.
Do you want to address the question to anybody in particular? Or
No,
no?
whoever.
Anybody want to react on the table or online? The question?
Well, I would say that if the question is addressed to me, I find the question interesting, but unfortunately I don't know the product and the standards applicable enough to answer your questions. But I think the points you raise make sense.
I don't know, Gabriel, I see you on the screen now, but I don't know if you turned it on because you wanted to react and intervene. Okay, please, so take the floor is yours.
Well, yeah, this question is very interesting, especially also in the Brazilian context. I think that those regulations may fit very well in the European energy mix, but in some other parts of the world, the conditions are different. So, for example, in Brazil, we do have a very renewable electricity mix, over 85%, a very renewable energy mix in general, over 45%. And I believe that in the end, the goal of those regulations is to have energy security and to reduce the use of high emission fuels, such as fossil fuels without carbon abating. So maybe in other parts of the world that don't have the same restrictions as Europe, those regulations could be implemented in a different way to assure the energy security and low emissions, but also be compatible with the demands that have been made for exports to Europe.
Thank you very much. Could you hand the mic just to the person behind you? Yeah, thank you very much. It should be working. There you are.
Okay. Daniel Ngwenya from Tanzania. Back in Tanzania, we're in Tanzania Renewable Energy Association, where we are looking into the potential for a hydrogen economy in Tanzania. So we are in a very, very early stage. My question goes to Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, you are importing tons of hydrogen from Australia. Can you share your experience right now? Are you applying these standards, or how does it go there?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. We try to import the hydrogen from Australia. It's, we can say, blue carbon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to import the blue carbon from Australia because we need demand. As I say, we need the production and demand at the same time. We try to increase the demand and we try to increase the production, but the production capacity in Japan is very limited. That's a reality in Japan at this moment. Of course, we would like to increase our production in Japan, but the reality, it's low. So that's because we need to import the hydrogen from Australia. But I think your question is the standardization.
The application of the standards on that, or we are just importing as long as it's hydrogen?
I think you have a very good point, because if I have a chance to say the challenge of the standard is transport. The production of the standard and the use of the standard, that might be easy to harmonize. But how to transport, that totally depends on the country's situation and the technology. So what I want to say, if I have a chance, I want to say the standard of the transportation is needed and challenged. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much. We have one more question there and another one over there, so please. Maybe now? No, but for the people online. Now it goes. Okay, thank you.
I have a very short follow-up question. My name is Rita Stromer. I work at IDOS, at the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. On you regarding the transport of blue hydrogen, yes, I assume, from Australia to Japan. You mentioned the transport issue. My question is just the vessel that carries the hydrogen, is this running on heavy oil, or are you developing technologies for machines, engines that run with ammonia, methanol? What is the perspective of Japan being a big shipbuilder?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. I think if anyone in this floor, please help me. But as in Japanese perspective, as I said, various pathway will be very important. And we believe innovation is very important. So we don't stick the one way to transport. There will be some innovation out there. For example, Kohara explained, e-methane will be one of the solutions to decarbonize our society as well. So we don't deny every possibility. We don't stick one policy. But the difficulty is we need some amount of the demand and the production. So we are now facing the challenges.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you for this panel. Moderator, Technical University, Darmstadt, Germany. I have a technical question on the e-methane strategy. You mentioned that 1% by 2030, 90% by 2050. Very ambitious, and direct air capture is involved. How much direct air capture is needed? Does it work?
Your question is the price of renewable electricity. That's a very big challenge, I think. But 20 years later, to 2050, we consider the 2 or 3 Japanese yen per kilowatt hour of renewable electricity. 2 or 3 Japanese yen, and in other words, 2 or 3 cents, 10 cents per kilowatt hour of renewable electricity.
Okay.
Big challenge.
Thank you very much. Well, this was very interesting. It did generate a lot of questions. Still some more. Please, over here.
I have a question for the panelists online.
Okay.
Very brief one. Being also a fellow Brazilian, I'm interested to know, it's like, to what extent do you think that hydrogen presents an opportunity for developing countries to become exporters of energy, and countries that actually were not necessarily blessed with a very large amount of natural resources in fossil fuels, but they now actually might be able to export and generate reserves or financial income for the country by exporting hydrogen. Not only Brazil, but other countries, maybe in the region, or I don't know if you are in contact with other countries in Africa and so on.
Thank you. Please, Gabriel.
Well, thank you very much for this question. This is very interesting because I do think that Brazil has a huge opportunity, not only for decarbonization of its own energy matrix or energy mix, but also for other countries' energy mix by using low carbon hydrogen. And this is mostly due to the plethora of diverse energy sources that are available in Brazil, but also the potential for hydrogen production And at the same time, it is a possibility to develop the country by bringing technologies for being developed over here for hydrogen production, but also for hydrogen derivatives and products decarbonized with hydrogen, and also increase the energy security of the country by having this hydrogen, and in the end, fostering the creation of jobs. So I believe that this is really a very good opportunity for Brazil, I would say, for the whole South America too. Right now I'm in Chile, and they also do have some very good projects and perspectives for hydrogen. So yes, I believe that this is very good for the whole South American developing countries in general.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the answer. Any final comment? Any of the panelists, any of the speakers wants to do? I think we've had a very good overview on the topic, different perspective, and some very direct, some more generic, and some very technical questions as well. So if this is not the case, then I would just like to try to, I want to close with a reference to the purpose, no, that you refer to, is create a market, generate that demand, and for that, of course, there's a lot of elements that could make it a success, no? In terms of investments, we've talked about the investments, we've talked about the price, we've talked about different policy elements that build the mix. We've talked about the need to develop some standards, some very specific elements have been mentioned, and then the need for resources to carry out the accreditation work to ensure that the bodies performing those certifications can really do their work properly. So I'm really satisfied. I think this panel has been very successful in terms of providing this overview of this market to be developed, and from the perspective of the standards and related policies side, not so much the other big challenges that also will influence its deployment. And it's only left for me to thank you all for attending, the ones online for being there, and especially the panelists and also Gabriel online. And thank you very much. I think we've deserved a good rest. It's a good time to go and rest a little bit. So thank you very much for your attention.